Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting for Thursday, March 26th at 6:30. At this time, to prevent any background noise, I would just ask all of you to mute your speaker on your screens. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can mute that until it's time to speak, and that will help a lot with clear communication. Just to mention, this meeting is being held fully remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020, order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30A, Section 20. You can join the Zoom meeting this evening, and if you go online, you will find the website zoom.us with the code and a meeting ID as well. The school committee videos will also be posted on our homepage, the most current, and on the website, and you can find those at www.monomoy.edu and our YouTube channel. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:36. Do I have a motion? No, I don't need a motion for that. Thank you. It's been a while. Okay, I just want to go over a couple things regarding the Zoom meetings, if you don't already know. Again, if you can keep your mics off when you're not speaking so that we can hear everyone well. You have the ability to raise your hand, but I can see most of the school committee members, so you can visually raise your hand for questions and discussions. We'll try that first, and if that works successfully. Also, as a reminder, all votes this evening will have to be a roll call vote. So I'll be calling on you individually for your roll call. Any questions you have regarding the running of the meeting, you can chat with myself or Leah or someone else down below, but I do believe that is all recorded as well. I want to also talk about surroundings. Just be mindful if you're moving around with your screen that just a reminder that this is a public meeting. Before we do the approval of the minutes, I just wanted to say a couple things because this is our first Zoom official school committee meeting, and I believe it's the first online meeting for the district. I think that's really, it's been scary, but very exciting, and I want to congratulate everyone. And on behalf of the Monomoy Regional School District School Committee, I want to, if I'm allowed to, do some special shark shout outs. I want to thank our administration. I want to thank our staff. I want to thank our cafeteria staff, our custodial staff, our teachers, our administration, teams that have been working countless hours over the last 2 weeks for what I have so far seen as an extremely successful rollout of e-learning. I've had the benefit of being behind the scenes, giving feedback and hearing all of the great work being done as a school committee member, trying to support where we can, and also as a parent of a middle school student and an elementary school student. From my impression, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. I won't say seamless because I know there's been some bumps in the road, but as far as what I can see, it's exciting. It's meeting so many social and emotional pieces for these kids right now in such a scary time. It's meeting their educational needs. Our teachers are being in touch with our students every day. They're smiling, they're communicating, they've got structure. It's just absolutely thrilling to be part of this rollout. I want to thank everyone very much for that. And I'm sure Dr. Carpenter will comment on that later. And it looks like he may want to say something right now before we do the.
I just need a technical thing. Leah, when you clicked Terry out, is there a way to allow him back in? Apparently when you had him exit the meeting, he can't get back in on his iPad.
All right, I will. Let's figure this out, shall we? All right, go ahead. Let me see if I can.
Okay, great. So again, everyone, custodial, cafeteria, admin, teachers, amazing job. So proud to be a part of the district. So excited to be part of this trip we're all taking together, and really excited to see where it takes us in the future.
Are we having any luck there?
We're still waiting to get Mr. Russell in. So in the meantime, what we'll do is approval of the minutes for the March 12th, 2020 meeting. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the minutes? And if not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of previous meeting?
All in favor? Oh, excuse me, I'm gonna do a roll call. Joanne,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Tina? Tina, turn your mic on.
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Sharon?
Aye.
And I don't believe we have Terry in here right now, so that's fine. Moving on to public comments. I do have one public comment that came in through email. So if you don't mind, it was from Charles Gruska, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to attend the meeting, but as we all know, he often participates in our public comments. So I'd like to start by reading his comment, and then we will go from there if there's anyone else who'd like to participate. Dear Ms. Zebrat Long, I do not know whether I will be able to zoom in to this Thursday's Monomoy School Committee meeting. However, there is something that I would like to share with the school committee through you in the event that I can't do so during the public comment period. Our granddaughter, who attends the middle school, has been coming to our house each weekday while her parents go off to work in essential health occupations. This maximizes the Wi-Fi connection at her house for use by her brother, who is a student at the high school. This has provided my wife, a retired middle high school teacher, and I a firsthand look at the distance learning educational experience being provided by the district. We want you to know that from all we have observed as both grandparents and taxpayers, we are extremely impressed with and pleased about the yeoman effort that all of the district staff have put into the implementation. From what we are able to discern from all that we read and hear about other school districts, the efforts of the Monomoy Regional School District is a beacon in the state in keeping a quality educational experience moving forward for its students. What we read and hear about other systems pales in comparison with how education is going on in the Monomoy district, which we have come to believe should serve as a model for the state. We believe Monomoy effort can be credited to having the resources provided by the taxpayers to provide home computer access to every student in the district, visionary and courageous leadership from the superintendent and the administrative team, and an attitude on the part of the entire staff that place the educational well-being of every student in the district as the first priority with the onset of this health crisis. The efforts of the administration and teachers to work collaboratively in planning for the crisis long before the time came to shut down schools is truly admirable and paying great dividends. As grandparents, we appreciate more than ever how very fortunate we feel and thrilled we are that 2 of our grandchildren are receiving their education in the Monomoy Regional School District. I'm sorry, I lost my place. As taxpayers, we are deeply gratified to see that because of the efforts of the district administration and staff, our tax dollars are providing the resources necessary to make it possible to maximize each day of the 180-day school year calendar to the educational benefit of the district students. Kudos to all. Sincerely, Charles T. Gruska, Harwich Town taxpayer. And at this time, if there are any, yes. Yay, Mark. And at this time, are there any other public comments? You can raise your hand. I don't think I see, if anyone sees something that I don't, please let me know. But I don't believe there are any other public comments at this time. There is another opportunity at the end of the meeting for public comments as well, just as a reminder. And next up would be Dr. Carpenter with recognitions.
I do not have any recognitions at this time. I'll just save them for the superintendent's report.
Excellent. And then on to reports and discussions. Item number 1, school closures and remote learning plan.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. School closures? No.
What?
It's been the all encompassing thing for the last several days. So first of all, I want to give just a lot of kudos to our staff. I think our teachers have been doing a great job with the distance learning that they've had to embark on quickly. Our cafeteria workers have been involved in feeding upwards of 164 students at lunch and are set to feed more. Our teaching assistants and special educators have been working with families, and I also want to give Mark Smith and Jim Birchfield a lot of credit too for getting us to this place. It's been a kind of a crazy time. So the governor has said that schools will be closed up till May 4th. So we're expecting that we're going to be in this for quite some time. I think at the moment, Monomoy is sort of leading the way amongst schools. I think others are still trying to figure out how to remotely connect with students and keep the social emotional learning pieces together, along with how do you go deliver curriculum. So tomorrow, Mark and I will be on a 10:30 meeting with the commissioner that will sort of outline. I think now the commissioner is going to be sharing, I guess, his guidelines for distance learning. But what he'll be sharing is something that we're already embarked on in our district. So so I had earlier today shared just our plans and what we're doing with other superintendents to sort of give them a feel for maybe how they could think about doing things in districts that are at least having one-to-one at some grade levels.
Hey, Jackie.
Jackie, you're muted.
That's how some people would like it. Moving on to the Monomoy Regional Middle School Improvement Plan update.
Good evening, everybody. Give me a second, I'll share my screen out. Can everybody see that? Yes? Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. I can't see you on my screen anymore. Good evening. Welcome to the Monomoy Regional Middle School 2020 data presentation. I want to thank Dr. Carpenter for setting the structure and format for the data presentations for all the principals. It's going to be a consistent format going forward for the presentations across the different buildings. So I've sent some slides out to you ahead of time, and I'll just kind of walk you through. If you have any questions, I cannot see you. Hang on, maybe I can see you. Let me try this. I can't see everybody in the window, so you're going to have to direct your questions through Jackie, and then I will be able to answer them as they come along. First moment is Roma Trends. We've seen an increase of 11.3% at the middle school over the last 5 years, which is pretty unusual compared to how other schools are doing across the Cape and the Islands. I'm going to have to close out all of your images because I cannot see my data with you in the screen, which is pretty unusual. This is very consistent with what we're trying to accomplish through our strategic plan, where we're going to keep individuals in the district. And we have seen a decrease in students opting out to charter schools or other opportunities in the local area, which is nice. So that's contributing to this growth over time. At the same time that our growth has increased for enrollment, we've also seen an increase of percentage of our at-risk students for EL, 504, and economically disadvantaged, not in special education, which has actually dropped a bit over the 5 years. But that means we have more students and there are greater needs. I'll pause after each slide and ask for questions. Accountability. The short total, I'm not even going to read this. The short version is there's a very complicated accountability formula where we are judged on our performance and our growth with other schools that are similar across the state, other middle schools that serve similar grade levels and student demographics. And 60% of our accountability data is 2019, and 40% of our accountability is 2018 data. So it's the last 2 years. Here's our 2018 accountability points. If you look at the first blue line where it says achievement total, you see that we earned 11 out of 12 points for all students and 6 out of 8 points for our lowest performing cohort. That's excellent. Same thing for growth, 7 out of 8. That's the green line now. 7 out of 8 for all students and 8 out of 8 for our lowest performing quartile. And our rating at the bottom was an 83%. We would have been much higher. If you look at the additional indicators line under chronic absenteeism, you see 0 points earned out of 4 for the whole school and 0 points out of 4 for our lowest performing students. So our households that, this is the only part of the data that we require households to do their thing and get students to us as long as they're healthy enough to do so. And that was not a spot where we did very well in 2018 and we lost 10 points. Otherwise we would have a 93% there. More of that at the end of the slideshow. And here's 2019. We did pretty well again in achievement, that first blue line, for all students. Not quite as good for our lowest performing cohort. Growth totals remained pretty solid, and you'll see a much better score for chronic absenteeism for the whole school, but not so much for our lowest performing quartile. This remains a concern for us. We have too many students that are accruing 18 or more absences a year, and total ranking of 68% for our building. And that data gives us a 74% over the 2 years. That's 60% of 68 and 40% of 83. And that places us as the best among the 11 Cape and Island schools that serve comparable grade levels. We're pretty proud that we are top on Cape and the Islands for our performance. Grade 5 MCAS results over the past 2 years. We see an increase of students meeting or exceeding expectations. We'd like to do more on the exceeding expectations. You'll see that as a theme throughout this. We're doing a decent job of getting students to the green bar, that's the meeting. We'd like to see more in the blue bar, the exceeding. And one way we're going to need to get there is provide more time for Tier 1 instruction. Here's math for the past 2 years. There was a slight decrease in percent of students meeting or exceeding, and I have the same concern about getting more students to the exceeding expectation. Grade Science and Tech for the past 2 years. Yes? Question? It's hard to compare these two tests because they're very different in format. The 2018 was a paper-based test, and the 2019 was the first statewide online formatting. We did better actually in the online formatting than we did in the previous paper-based. But we've always been very much in the forefront with regards to how we perform against other Cape and Island schools. MCAS trends. We've seen some positive things here with trending for meeting and exceeding expectations over the last 3 years. In grade 5 ELA in 2017, we're at 48% students meeting or exceeding, and now we're up to 60. In math in 2017, we're at 37%, now we're up to 56. In grade science, we're at 68% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations. And our student growth percentiles are excellent. I'll speak more to that in a minute. I did add some additional slides to this presentation beyond the ones I sent to you, and it's going to give you a highlight of the information that's over on the right. I'm going to call it data tic-tac-toe because we're either reading across or down for this. So the first is to pay attention to our male-female differences in achievement. This is for grade 5 now, and the percent of males who exceeded or met expectations in ELA was 43, and math was 51, and science is 68. And you see our females, the percentage exceeding or meeting expectations are much higher, 75%, 62%, and 70% respectively. That is not unique to Monomoy. It's true for every middle school in Massachusetts and indeed across the country. There is a significant difference between how males are performing on our statewide accountability assessments and females are performing on the accountability assessments. And it is dogging every middle school principal in Massachusetts, and it's keeping me up at night trying to figure out what we can do differently to help some of our male students perform at the same level as their female counterpart. We also have a challenge for our economically disadvantaged students with disabilities. Please look at those numbers, and they are significantly lower, not surprisingly, but significantly lower than our non-disadvantaged students or all students. If you look back at the top, you'll see how all students did, and you can get a comparison there. So we need to provide Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, extended summer school year programming for kids, extend the school day, provide more Tier 1 instruction. All of that needs to happen so we can close the gap between our students who are at risk and those who are not. On student growth percentile, 50 to 59 numbers are generally good. That's typical growth. Once you hit 60 for average student growth percentile, you're above average. I'll speak more to that in a minute. So where the numbers are blue, that's generally typical to average to high average. You get closer to 60. If you fall below 50, you've got slightly below average. We always want our SDPs 50 or higher. So anytime you see in the yellow here, that's an opportunity for us to reflect on what we're doing in our instruction and try to make sure that students are making at least 1 year's progress in 1 year. The other side for grade 5 math, only 20% of the schools in Massachusetts have mean SDPs at 60 plus. Wherever you see a number that's in the 60s, it means that we're in the top 20% of all schools in Massachusetts and helping our students make more than 1 year's growth in 1 year. In fact, if you get above 63.5, you're in rarefied air, then you're down in only 15%. So a lot of these numbers on this chart put us in the top 15% of all schools in mathematics for math instruction at grade 5. Any questions? Can you hear me out there? Are there any questions?
Don't see any.
Okay, keep going. This piece here, there's a lot of data on this screen, but I've summarized it for you down at the bottom to make it easier for you to compare the different schools that serve grade 5. At the top, you kind of have all the schools that serve 5th graders and what percentage of the students were exceeding or meeting or exceeding or meeting in general. At the bottom, you just see where we place among all the 5th grade schools in the Cape and Islands. ELA were 3rd, math were 1st, science were 2nd. And our student growth percentile rank, we're in 6th for ELA and we're 1st place for math. Those numbers in general are very good. And that 6th place ranking in ELA would speak to the importance of having a guaranteed and viable curriculum through a reading program that runs K to 5. If not beyond that. And that's, I think, an item that the school committee has discussed previously with a presentation from Mark Smith about work that's being done to create a stronger reading ELA curriculum as we move through the district. 6, we had a significant increase in students meeting or exceeding expectations, which is great. Don't be confused that the scales are different on this particular set of slides. Where we had 42 in 2018 meeting, we're at 50 in 2019. We have a lot higher percentage of students exceeding, so that was an exceptional growth for us. You'll see that in growth scores in a minute. We also had a significant increase in percentage of students meeting received expectations for mathematics. I'd still like to see more kids at the exceeding category for our math. Information here is also pretty good. We're trending upward over time. And our SDPs remain pretty strong with regard to what we're seeing for numbers. 2019, I love they're at 64.4 for ELA and 63 for the math. Both of those put us in the top 15% of schools in Massachusetts. Same thing, tic-tac-toe on this. So I have additional slides that break that out. We see the same trend where our male students are performing at a less degree of success than their female counterparts. That are at-risk students are struggling compared to their peers in the rest of the school. That students with disabilities in particular continue to be a group that we are keeping an eye on. We want to make sure we help them as much as possible, close that gap. And for student growth percentiles, fantastic in ELA, pretty much everywhere we're in the 60s. Our students with disabilities make typical growth. We'd like that number to be in the 60s so that they can catch up to their peers across Massachusetts. And in math, same story. We had typical growth on the high side with these numbers in the mid 50s, except for our students with disabilities, which had the 48.1. We can do better there. Same story here. Achievement rank for ELA for 6th grade, we're in 2nd place of all the Cape and Island schools, and 2nd place for SGP. Math, we're in 3rd place, and 5th place for our student growth percentile rank. Grade 7, between 2018 and 2019, we had a slight increase in meeting or exceeding. Again, we'd like to have more students in the exceeding category. Friends, again, typical that we're trending upward over time. I'm sorry, excuse me, strike that. For this one, students meeting or exceeding expectations has varied. You see there's a drop actually from 2017 down to 2019 from 60 to 48. That performance actually mirrors similar shifts in state level. In 2017, you're looking at the PARC exams, and then we shifted back to 2018 and 19. We're back at the MCAS, the new MCAS exams, which were significantly actually harder than PARC, as hard as PARC was. You see that drop. And so our numbers are similar to what's happening in the state. Grade 7 is struggling statewide, and so are we. Same thing, tic-tac-toe. You continue to see the difference between male and female achievement. Continue to see a challenge for our at-risk students and how their performance is with regard to meeting the bar of MCAS, which is the hardest test in the country. And we have some okay numbers here and some work to improve. I'm not real happy with the numbers in the yellow numbers you see on the screen that for our SGPs. That means our students are did not demonstrate a typical year's growth in a typical year, except for a couple of spots for all students in ELA and our females in ELA and our economically disadvantaged, which was terrific growth for them on the ELA side. We didn't have a great year last year in grades. Same summary, ELA 5th place among the Cape and Island schools, 6th place for SGP, math in 3rd place, SGP is 6th place. And that puts us, if you take it all together, we're still the #1 school in the Cape and the Islands based on our accountability percentile. It's kind of interesting. We're in the middle of the pack in our achievement, but we're moving up quickly. So that's actually what gets us that 74% substantial progress. We're making greater degree of growth than the other 11 schools, and that what actually is. Map summary, this is just fall to winter results for the 3 grade levels at a snapshot. The orange diamond is what we would expect for growth between the September administration and the January administration. And the blue squares are the observed growth. Wherever you see a blue above the diamond, that's good news. It means that we grew more as a school than what was anticipated by the setting. Okay. So great in grade 5, solid in grade 6, grade 7. We fell slightly below our projected growth. And I have my 7th grade staff taking a look at that to see what we can do for ramping up our reading expectations. When we get to the spring, we'll be able to be back on track for 1 year's growth in 1 year. The reverse is true on math. As much as we've done extremely well in our MCAS with regard to achievement and growth, we fell a little short on our MAP projections. And the reverse is true as you go the other direction. We're way above our expectations for grade 7 math in terms of the mid-year. The observed growth is substantially higher than what the projected growth was. We did have a shift in our math instruction this year. We went heterogeneous classes. And that this data here is the first formal data that we have that supports that shift and seems to be benefiting the majority of students, and that the growth interacting with their peers on a daily basis has been. Attendance rate and chronic absenteeism. 10% of our school's accountability rating is based on student attendance. We need students to have fewer than 18 absences each year. Once you hit 18, regardless of the reason, you can have 18 incredibly valid reasons to be absent, but once you hit 18, you are deemed to be chronically absent by the state, and that goes against us on our accountability reporting. So our goal is to have as few students as possible hit that 18 number. Again, it doesn't matter the nature of the absence. It could be the best reason ever. It does not make a difference to the state or to our accountability or to my obligations in holding parents accountable for getting their children to school. Our biggest challenge at the moment is when families take a vacation of 5 days, 7 days, 8 days during the school year, and when you add that to the typical number of absences that students will accrue as a result of injury or illness, it will generate multiple attendance letters as students close in on those 18 absences and potential court involvement. Least popular letter I send out, but I'm required to. You'll see that the 460 letters that we sent out during the course of 2019 made a difference. In 2018, we had a very high chronic absenteeism rate of 14.8, including a incredibly high rate of 30.3. Almost 1/3 of all of our students with disabilities missed 18 or more days of school over the course of the year. In 2019, we've dropped to 6.4 for the building as a whole, and much better with our students with disabilities at 7.5. We had a lot more school-to-home communication, a lot more letters, a lot more pre-CRA meetings where the district attorney comes and sits with households and we say, let's partner, to put in strategies to make sure we can help your child get to school. And that has resulted in a significant improvement in our attendance from 2018 to 2019. And we're continuing with those procedures. Attendance comparisons across the Cape and Islands. We're second. Only Sandwich and Oak Ridge School at 5.1 has a better attendance rate than Monomoy Regional Middle School. And last in the presentation are English language learners. All EL students must reach proficiency within 6 years. Here's a snapshot of how many students are in Monomoy Regional Middle School. We have 3 students who are in their very first year in not only Massachusetts, but in our school. They are native speakers in other tongues, and we're just beginning the process of having them learn English. We've got 4 students who are in their second year, 1 student in the third year, 1 student in their fourth year, and then a number of students in their 5th and 6th year. For all of those 25 students, the beginning students, those are the 12% of our students who score on each proficiency tier. Those are our 3 students who are brand new to the language. And all the other 22 are at the advanced stages. They're making nice progress. Of those 12 who've been at least in Massachusetts for 6 years, 7 have met the exit criteria, and 5 we're still working with to help them master all the intricacies of language. And unsurprisingly, like I shared, at the beginning level, only our first year students are there. We're doing a pretty solid job of meeting the needs of our EL students, and we do need to do a better job with 5 of our 12 kids who've been here for. That is all the information I have to share with you this evening.
Great, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any questions or comments, discussion for Mr. Wilson at this time? Please feel free to just raise your hand and I will call on you. I'm just trying to get my gallery back up so I can see everybody. Oop, there we go. Give it a minute. Or not. Is someone raising their hand and I don't see them? Whoa, what did I do? Okay, I'm gonna go with no one's raising their hand.
I've rendered you all speechless.
I know. Oh, there we
Everybody can
go.
Also, so if,
Okay, I see Tina. Tina, please.
I just have a standard question because I'm very curious. It looks like they changed all the wording, like proficient is now meeting, needs improvement is partially meeting. Do you have any idea why that was? I'm just curious.
When they made the switch in 2018 to away from Park and back to MCAS, it's the next generation of MCAS, MCAS 2.0. They shifted the language to be consistent with sort of the Park language so that it'd be less confusing, and had that same language just continue forward even though the test went back to.
Thank you.
Sharon, did you have a question?
I do not have a question, but I do have a comment.
Yep.
And my comment is that I'm very impressed with the progress that our kids are making. I really appreciate how detailed and broken down that is, not just for us, but obviously for goal setting and to work for the different groups. But I was hugely impressed at the very dramatic attendance difference on some of those subgroups. And I'm sure that that has something to do with the achievement growth also. But thank you very much for all of the work that you and the teachers do on that.
Thank you, Sharon.
Any other questions or discussion for Mr. Wilson? I had one question regarding the accountability ratings and the state requirements going forward. Is that going to be changing? I don't know why, but I feel like I heard something about that changing, or are we continue, was the state guidelines staying the same for the next year?
You asking me whether, I'm not sure I understand specifically your question. Are they making any alterations to their accountability requirements? Not that I'm aware of. Mark, have you heard anything on your side, Mark Smith?
Jackie, are you referring to in response to COVID-19 or just general changes altogether?
I'm just in general changes prior to COVID-19. I know that we were sending letters for children who were, had excessive absences. Is that still happening, or is it changing?
Yeah, so the commissioner was seeking feedback. So like the way the federal law is written allows the states to choose, like they have to use an assessment measure, but then they can sort of, they essentially submit an application to the federal Department of Education on how the state is going to monitor accountability. And they have some flexibility. They have to use some measures that are not like testing measures. And that's where they came up with the chronic absenteeism. So they did start some conversation around maybe either looking differently at attendance, because they've gotten a lot of feedback from superintendents I know across the state. They talked about either looking differently at attendance or maybe adding additional measures or looking at measures differently. That conversation is kind of definitely halted. I think the commissioner's attention is definitely in a different direction right now. But I know they were collecting feedback, but that has definitely gone on the back burner for now, because now they're having conversations about having to get relief from federal law that requires, things like the MCAS, and that's written into the state law. So they're really working on in the here and now right now. But you were not wrong. They were having some conversation around that. So.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Can I chime in on that real quick?
Yes.
One thing we're hoping to do, even if COVID extends so we're not able to come back into school, we're still set up that we can actually administer the MAP tests remotely. And we actually are hoping to be able to do that so we can gather some data just informally to be able to collect and see how kids are doing over
time. That's amazing. And to kind of go along with that, I'm really interested to see the district's numbers in attendance with the e-learning compared to last year's this time of year, just with the traditional way we go to school. Really lots of new and exciting things to be able to follow for next year as well. Ms. Scott?
Hi.
And then Joanne.
Mark, I just want to say that I know that there's been a lot of feedback from families who get the letters from being chronically absent. And people get their nose kind of bent out of shape, the fact that they're getting this letter and they don't feel like they need to. And I think that, you can see the importance of it over the time, and how it's improved the scores over the years of the kids being in school. But I think parents are missing the point that it's not aimed at them. It's not an individual, hey, your kid's been out, type of thing. But I think it's important that parents realize that it's not pointing to them as being bad or doing something wrong. It's just that this is part of what we have to keep track of, type of thing.
Thank you for making that point. Yes.
And Joanne?
Just a quick question about the ELA. Does the MAP and I suppose the MCAS, yes, have a degrees of reading power element? Mostly the MAP. I looked at the MCAS, but the MAP having a degrees of reading power embedded in it.
The MAP allows us to gauge students' growth over the span of time. We administer it 3 times a year, September, January, and typically June, right after the MCAS assessments. And it does allow us to see how students have grown with their reading and their mathematics, not with writing. We do not have a writing component to the MAP tests. And it does give us a sense of how much students have grown through their Lexile scores. We can see what kind of growth they're making in terms of their reading sophistication. Not sure if that answers your question, but and it's computer adaptive. So a child can design so that the last half of the test, you're supposed to almost get to the point where you get 1 right, 1 wrong. If you get questions wrong several times in a row, the test adjusts itself to bring the level down to where the test taker is at. And then that allows every student to get tested at their instructional level, which is fantastic. Something very different from MCAS, which is just written as a standard test for every child in Massachusetts, regardless of where they are in terms of their learning continuum. The MAP actually adjusts to where a student is at. This is a really good read.
And then the other question then would be, as far as the writing piece, only in the MCAS, is that correct?
Correct, yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just scrolling through my Brady Bunch screen and making sure I've got everybody. Terry, I see you've joined us. Yay. And I don't think I see any other questions or comments for Mr. Wilson at this time. If I am correct. I thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Excellent presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, wait. Mary, did you have your hand up? No, you're adjusting your screen.
Well, I can't see everybody. I don't know what I did, but I did just have one quick question for Mark, because I was trying to look as we were going through the presentation, and the data that you shared was based on grade level of 1 year to grade level of another year. Do you see, in your opinion, kind of, because I'm sure you're looking at the data in this way, improvement in cohorts as they move through the middle school? Are you seeing that those percentages are growing as they go from 5th grade to 6th grade and 6th grade to 7th grade?
I think the best, yeah, absolutely yes. I'm looking at it from cohort. And the simplest way for sort of the viewing audience to get that is to look at the student growth percentiles. So as long as our growth percentiles are 50 or higher every year, we know that our students are making at least typical growth. 50 is typical. Most of the student growth percentiles in our building over time are running in the high 50s into 60s and sometimes even up to 70s and 80s. So we know that what we're doing over time as students move, if each year they're going to get at least, let's say 58 to 60 would be a kind of a neat range to be in. That means our whole school as a group is advancing kids faster than every other middle school in Massachusetts. That's why I love student growth percentile. It's a great way for us to assess how are we doing collectively. And if you think of a student moving from grade 5 to grade 6 to grade 7, if they hold at the 60 student growth percentile from grade 5 to grade 6 to grade 7, and they move up to grade 8, they have advanced more in 3 years than 85% of all the rest of the students in Massachusetts. So that's why we set 60 as a target for our building, and why I know if we're close to 60, and you saw a lot of those blue bold numbers.
Yep.
that those students are advancing faster than 85% of the rest of the kids in Massachusetts. When we do that, we give ourselves a nice round of applause when our faculty meetings. And that's why that's such an important target, and particularly important target for our at-risk groups. We want those students to catch up to their peers. It means they have to have numbers higher than 50. Otherwise, the gap is staying.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, great. I think that is everyone. And Mark, if you could just, you're still sharing your screen. So if you want to shut that down when you're done.
Well, that's not helpful. I'll do that.
That's okay, it's perfect. All right, moving on to the Harwich Board of Selectmen summary and potential budget impact. Dr. Carpenter?
Well, if there's anything that makes COVID-19 look easy, it's going before the Board of Selectmen sometimes. So, we had a video meeting with the Harwich Select Board this past Monday, so 3 days ago, and the feedback from the board generally was that they wanted to see our assessment come in at under 2% or at 2%. So, so our budget is hovering right at about 2%. Our blended assessment between Harwich and Chatham is, is right, right where I think the select board would want, but because we see a disproportionate number of students from Harwich relative to Chatham, that change in the foundation enrollment over time is creating a situation where you see the assessment in one town going going negative and Harwich is being positive, which creates the this we're over 2% in Harwich. Katie, do you have the how much we would have to cut the budget by? I think it was roughly about $250,000 to get us to 2%, and we've already reduced the budget that was voted by the school committee at our last meeting by $92,000. So it should be, we'd have to cut about another $150,000 to get to their number.
It's actually 170.
Okay. So so you can imagine if we're cutting 170,000 out of the budget, then we're having to look at potentially the ELA curriculum, and instead of rolling it out in one fell swoop, phasing it in over a series of years, or using more excess and deficiency to fund the ELA rollout in 1 year. So I think on some level we'll need to get the finance subcommittee back together before our next school committee meeting and discuss it more. There's also what I was sharing with the Harwich Selectmen. There's the elephant in the room that nobody seems to be wanting to talk about right now, and that's that our school district's budget and all the town department budgets are based on some assumptions on what revenues would look like at the state level and from the town level. And you could imagine that we built all of our budgets before COVID-19 hit and before there was all these closures. And one of the things that I'm hoping that we'll get clarity on from both Harwich and Chatham is what do they anticipate their revenue forecast actually looking like when meals tax and hotel taxes and excise taxes that they were projecting don't come in like they were projecting, which then potentially puts them in a position to go and notify all town departments, including the school district, and say, I'm sorry, we don't have this to fund your operations moving forward. And I don't want to go into a school year in a situation where we're potentially in a financially untenable situation. And you never want to have to lay off people, midstream. And, but at the moment, I don't think anybody has, I think we're all doing everything we can to kind of deal with the immediate crisis that COVID-19 is presenting us. And I think there needs to be some stepping back to go say, okay, how is all of this going to impact the budget? Because we're going to be heading into a town meeting with a school budget and town budgets that are all based on an underlying assumption that the money coming in was the same before all this happened. And I'm a little worried how that's going to play out in our towns unless we kind of do some pausing for a moment and just try to assess what the impact might be.
Great, thank you, Dr. Carpenter. And Ms. Scott.
So I think I wasn't at the meeting or on Zoom for the meeting with Harwich, but I watched it later. And I think that there's a couple of things. So Mike McCaskill was very stuck on the fact that we needed to come in like departments. He asked the town departments to come in at a less than 2% increase. And my concern is that while we are a huge portion of the town's budget, we have things in our budget that town departments don't have. And so I don't know exactly what those are, but I think we need to, I know health insurance is a part of it, but this year it's a moot point because health insurance is zero. And I think that there's a bit of a discrepancy between what they expect from the schools and what they expect from the library department in terms of budgets and what we bring in our budget versus what they have in their budgets. So that's one concern that I have. The second concern is, I know our overall budget assessment increase is 1.5. I don't have the document in front of me, but 1.5-ish over FY20. And so while our assessment to Harwich isn't 1.5, the overall budget is. And, as Dr. Carpenter mentioned, the fact that the enrollment shifted away from Chatham towards Harwich, which increased their contribution, that affects it. And I just have a difficult time with, because there's more kids coming from Harwich, they're paying a little bit more of the budget, and therefore their 1.5% assessment increase goes up to the I don't have the papers in front of me, 2.4, I think, for Harwich assessment this year. And then the second comment that I have is, in watching the meeting, Don Howell, he almost seems to be really stuck on the E&D, and that we shouldn't have an E&D, and that E&D is the town's money and that should go back to them, and we should have zero. So we should just use up whatever we need to get us back to zero. And I feel like we've tried to explain what the point of the excess and deficiency is and where we get it from and why we use it and why we need it. And just seems to be stuck on the fact that, well, Harwich wants us to have a smaller assessment for the town, and therefore we should use more E&D to get to that point. I think we've explained it multiple times. I feel like they're not seeing the bigger picture of why we need an E&D account. And maybe we don't need an E&D account as large as it is. Although Steve Duvall would be rolling over right now for anybody saying that. But I think we do need the E&D, and I'm saying that it's important, but I don't know how to get that out there for them to understand more. That's it for now.
I was just going to say real quick, or Katie, why don't you go first? And then I'll look for.
Nancy, I just wanted to just say, you were saying that we have, in addition to health insurance, we have things in our budget, and you weren't quite sure what those were. but we have, you know, county retirement, which is the retirement for all of the employees that contribute to Barnstable County retirement and not to Mass Teachers retirement. And that's over $1 million budget line item. We also have workers' compensation. We have of over 170,000. We have insurance and property insurance, liability insurance, and all the other insurances that are $478,000. So all of those are big chunks of money that impact the cause for over 2%. And I think that I just want to just say that always I believe that the budget process is a very thoughtful process. And, you know, there was some discussion about the health insurance that should have been just automatically, you know, turned back, reduced the budget by, but as the conversation came about, you know, our role is to advocate for the education, and then that, you know, we're talking about adding to the curriculum. So that was, I just wanted to fill in those pieces that are not just the health insurance that fall into us.
I was just going to follow up, but Nancy, what I think you're saying is, you know, you're kind of comparing apples to oranges here as far as the two different types of budgets. And also regarding the E&D fund, I mean, if we want to talk about a perfect scenario for why we carry an E&D fund, we need to talk about what's happening right now and how we may be utilizing this E&D fund to recover from whatever it may be. This is the perfect example of why we have that fund and why we justify having that fund.
Exactly.
Terry, did I see you raise your hand?
Just have to unmute.
Unmute yourself, Terry. Where are you?
I got him.
There, I see him. Go ahead, Terry.
Have I got some vocal now? Can you?
Yep.
I can hear you.
Hi, everybody. I get frightened thinking I'm on the big screen. I'm just getting used to a little tiny thing. Kudos to Anne Marie. However, a couple of thoughts. One, I agree with Scott that sooner rather than later we should get a subcommittee meeting, and if it's less than 10, I'd even say face-to-face, but that's my age. Subcommittee on finance, talk about what we are kicking around here. Second, my impressions, I was on the phone, not on the video, on the select board's meeting, and yes, it is a little apples and oranges. However, I think, and Jackie, you said it, that now that we're in reality the past few weeks regarding the coronavirus, that in itself explains this sort of small amount of money, 1.34, in the way of E&D that we're going to have to look towards. So that'll evolve. I think part two, that Scott and Katie can get a hold of Joe and whoever, the finance people over there, and begin in the next 3 or 4 weeks to get a projection as to what would be shortfall regarding the town, and then we will hear the bad news sooner rather than later. But if I could back up, my impression of our needs didn't change at all from the other night. Frankly, building in the reading program K4 prior to the coronavirus was fortunate. And my first quick thought might be we're 170,000 short of the select board's 2%. I'd say we explore looking into that, and at the same time make certain out of E&D, and you maybe go from 134 down to 1, we buy the reading program. That leaves us, say, $1 million, give or take, and without maybe $1.2 million if it rolls over in the year next. And as far as the corona and the shortfall in the budget, we'd end up having a new reading program and at the same time satisfying what I see as an impossible, right at the moment, argument. Yes, I agree. 2-3, Harwich, Chatham 0-something. Right now, 2 members of the board aren't going to agree with that anyways. My impression is that Larry Valentine is the swing vote with some activity on our part. in the next couple of weeks regarding where can we find that goal towards 2? And it may in fact be a reality lower than 2, but I don't, with Corona coming down the horizon another 2 months with some other numbers, I think that gets us back on a footing. Do we need an E&D? We sure do. But I don't see if there's any defense of trying to convince them that $1 million or $1.3 million is comfortable. I totally disagree with Don Howell's thought that maybe we should just roll all the money over with the assessment every year, so we don't have that. And I don't think we need to engage in that. I think Dana, the new chair of the Finance Committee, alluded to the same thing, that more E&D should be just expended towards probably the town's needs. So I think within the week, I think we should sit as a subcommittee on finance and see what we could do with kind of a two-forked program. One, to see what it takes to get us at the 2, and at the same time commit to that reading program.
Great, thank you, Terry. Tina.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm with Katie. So if I understood correctly, you said the difference is 100. So if, let's just say hypothetically, we meet what they're asking, that's 170,000, was that, and that's total. So, and that amount, it's not all 170, of course, going back to Harwich, it would be the 75-25, correct? Okay, all right, okay. And I would agree with Terry that I think we do have to have a subcommittee meeting, and I agree with everything that was said. And I also, I don't know going into the town meeting this year, whenever it will be, because who knows. You know, I am a little concerned. I agree with Terry that it appears Larry is going to be the swing vote. I think we have to prepare and for a plan that he might not go in our favor. So, and that basically just means that we would go into town meeting without the Board of Selectmen's blessing. That will mean something to a lot of people in the town, and other people won't really care about it. So I think we just have to weigh those odds.
Great, thank you, Tina. Terry.
Just to follow up Tina's comment about the town meeting, under the present climate that we're experiencing now, compounded by the Corona news throughout the Cape, I don't see, as a member of the committee, moving in, looking towards having the town meeting floor vote a yes when the word gets out that we have 1.3 million and change sitting there without any movement of trying to help out this assessment. I would rather be on, and I know Scott's term regarding our virtual schooling, if you can find the high road of moral ground, you're far better off. I don't know if we are individually can sell the idea that we are solidified upon 2.34 as an assessment for Harwich, and at the same time having our opponents say, yes, they are, and they have 1.3 million and change sitting there. So I think there's some, not that I like the idea, but under the circumstances, there's some other type of movement we need to look at. And at the same time, and I don't mean quid pro, meaning don't do the reading. Don't do the reading program, because I see getting that, because things are just going to get worse without budget. So I'd get that.
Tina.
Happening.
Hold on, yeah,
Karen.
and my understanding being there, and I just also wanted to make sure that everybody at the Board of Selectmen understood that this wasn't just a Harwich decision, that, you know, we have colleagues from Chatham. So I'm just going to say, and I know we're going to go into subcommittee, I think when I think about $170,000, I mean, and I understand everything everybody said, totally agree. I just think this is a very unusual year. And I think $170,000 out of E&D, because what I perceived, and with Michael McCaskill, what it sounded to me is he was very upset about the difference in the insurance and why wasn't it put back. So I think we've already agreed that the ELA curriculum is important. And I would like to see that happen. I don't want to cut it in phases. I think it's important that we put it all in one go. And if it takes $170,000 to get it done out of E&D, that would be what I would ask everybody to think about. So that's just kind of my thought on it. I just think it's a very unusual year, and going into town meeting, I don't know. I think I agree with Terry, because I think it's a good gesture, and I would rather move in that direction than have to get up and talk about 1 point whatever million in E&D and what that means. And I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So thank you.
Sharon?
Okay, good. I can't type anything in because I'm on my phone. So I just, on a different line, that going back to the E&D. Now, maybe Scott can clarify, or you can, Jackie. Isn't E&D similar to free cash of the Selectmen?
Dr. Carpenter?
It is. It's equivalent.
Okay, so I think that we should maybe consider that the Selectmen could give us some guidance on what percentage of E&D, or that, I don't know how their total budget compares with ours, but maybe we can look at, of course, if they think their E&D is free cash is important, that would be equivalent. So those two things could be talked about similarly, and we can see what they're doing and see if that's something similar we could look at us doing.
Okay. All right. Any other, Katie?
So just to put numbers to the conversation, already with the FY21 budget, we were looking to spend $550,000 in E&D to offset the assessment. Then we added the $189,809 for the curriculum. And then if we're talking about an additional $170, so that would be for this FY21, $909,809. And we still would have a balance, and you say balance loosely because you don't really know how this year is going to end up, $1,150,418. So, there you have it.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like it's the same argument every year. They don't understand or grasp the assessment. They don't understand or grasp the E&D. Different year, same argument, definitely different circumstances this year. So lots to think about and process. I think, Ms. Scott, did you have your hand raised?
Just, could you repeat that number again, Katie, the last one, the E&D number?
9.
So the current balance is $1,320,418. So if we use an additional $170,000, it would be $1,150,418.
Thank you.
Which is still a healthy balance.
Still won't be good enough. All right. Moving on. No more questions that I'm seeing. Dr. Carpenter is pointing.
Pointed Mary.
Is someone raising a hand? Oh, Mary. Hi, Mary. Yes. Mrs. Henderson.
Hi. Katie, what would the percentage be of the E&D then at the 1,150,000? Do you know?
You just have to give me a minute and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
All right, Katie, while you do that math, we'll move on, and then you can definitely interrupt at any time with that answer for Mrs. Henderson. If we're done with this discussion for now, and then Katie's going to get back to us, we're going to move on to food distribution. Dr. Carpenter.
So we have been distributing food at the middle school and high school. We have our cafeteria workers are coming in, putting together lunches and breakfasts each day. Anybody can pick up, if you're a child, it doesn't matter if you go to Monomoy, it doesn't matter if you're on free and reduced lunch, you can go and get a lunch and a breakfast each day at the school. We have on the 23rd, we distributed 136 meals, 164 meals between the two buildings on the 24th. Yesterday, 150 meals, and today 163 meals. We're still, my worry is that we're still far short of the number of families that are on free and reduced. So we have about 850 students on free and reduced. About almost 45% of our student body is in the free and reduced category. That represents almost 706 or 750 different families. So we have been looking into a strategy on do we start making meals and delivering them to households. And I know Katie has been looking into other districts that have been exploring it. The state initially put out some guidance a week ago that I was pushing back on that said that you couldn't go door to door, and they've changed that since in the week since. So it is something that we're going to look into as we get into this upcoming week. I don't know if Katie wants to chime in more.
I do. Thank you. It's amazing all the different models that are in place in the different communities, and just like the distance learning, this whole coronavirus, it's a work in progress. So districts are kind of in their phase 2 and phase 3. Some of them, and it's kind of an exciting, they deploy out buses, like 7 or 8 buses into different locations, and then people can just go. All I can think of is kind of like the bookmobile when it used to go out into the community. It was the same type of thing, and there's a connectivity. Others are packing up on Fridays like a week's worth of food and giving out the makings for the next week. And then some are doing the door-to-door pickup, drop off, like Dr. Carpenter mentioned. So I kind of want to get in a room with a couple of people, including food service director and a few others, and kind of brainstorm through our next phase. I think that this as tomorrow will be just our first full week of doing this, and a lot of districts are seeing a low number of people coming by for the grab and go, and part of it is because there are a lot of other resources right now. I feel like the longer this goes on, the more people are going to be turning to the schools for more and more help. So I think we have a couple of exciting options that we could try out. But definitely, I totally envision using our buses in a couple of different ways.
Katie, I was going to say, as soon as we were talking about the numbers, my first thing was access.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge piece. And when you're asking someone to come out once a day for 2 meals, 5 days a week, we've got parents that are struggling, with jobs. We've got parents that are struggling in healthcare that aren't supposed to be out. We've got people that probably don't drive. So many pieces. So of course, my first thought is the Good Humor ice cream truck, she goes everywhere. But the buses, great models to look at. I also really like the idea of your week's worth in one delivery or your week's worth in one pickup. Mm-hmm. I know for my household, my grocery bill's shooting through the roof because people are here and they normally aren't. So maybe just making it a once a week or twice a week trip. I think that idea is definitely something I'm excited to see what you guys come up with.
And we do have a meeting tomorrow at 12 with the head of the nutrition department with the DESE. So okay. I think that, right now, the absolute positive mission of the district as well as the Commonwealth is to get food to families. But at the same time, food service is a really, really federally regulated program. So we want to make sure that we're going down the right path.
Do you think the next phase is something that will roll out before our next school committee meeting, where we could maybe see numbers that have increased, or are we thinking more 4 weeks out?
I think I got to brainstorm with my fearless leader.
Okay.
We may have a difference of opinion, maybe, but we'll
Shocking.
see. We'll see. It's absolutely, I can
Possibility,
see it
but
towards the end of next week, possibly
okay.
deploying things a little differently, but still maintaining I still like some people really like just driving by and picking them up. So I think we want to have a few different models.
Could have both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Ms. Scott?
When people drive through, do you have an idea of the families that are there and the families that are on free and reduced lunch and therefore are not getting food? I mean, do we have an idea of the numbers of, I know our numbers are down from what free and reduced lunch are, but are we like keeping track of the families you haven't seen?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I went down.
Reaching out to them?
I spoke with the women that were doing the distribution today, and they did say there are a couple of families that they haven't seen. You know, I'm thinking, you know. So Joy was putting out a blast today to remind everybody, because there still is the belief that only free and reduced lunch kids were eligible. So we're letting the word out that, of course, everybody, and then the principals were reaching out to their families as well. There's been, we have a food pantry at Chatham Elementary that's been distributing too. So as I said, I think there's some other supplies that are being delivered that maybe won't always be there. So.
Ms. Scott?
Just another thought that maybe the elementary school morning meetings, because a lot of parents are a part of those, especially for the younger set.
Yep, that's a good idea.
Something could be mentioned during that
Good
time.
idea.
Yeah, we can talk to the principals for sure.
Would there be a possibility of doing a kind of a survey? You know, how's it going? How's the lunch service going? How many are utilizing this? How many would be interested in utilizing whatever other 2 ideas? And then you may even from that be able to articulate or figure out rather how many bag lunches you need to have prepared for the school for pickup versus, you know, and we should prepare 300 once a week bags, or kind of get a feel of, and then maybe we can pull some of those people out. And I do agree too, Katie, there's a lot going on right now in the communities for food. I know Hanger Bee's doing something. There's a lot, but it's gonna slow down and it's gonna phase out. And, you know, there's a lot of to-go options as well. I don't know how much longer, you know, the governor will allow that to happen. Who knows? So all good information. Thank you very much.
And just as a reminder to all the families that on Fridays, meals are distributed, you know, so 3 breakfasts and 3 lunches go home on Friday. So for each child, so you get a breakfast for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and a lunch for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as well. So, you know, Friday's a big day to come by, even if that's the only day you come by.
Sharon?
Yes, I love that we're doing this, along with, of course, what the teachers are doing. But I'm wondering if there's not a way to, a whole lot of people just lost their jobs just a couple days ago. And so I'm thinking that there's going to be, by next Monday, be a lot of needs that there weren't last Monday. I wonder if there's not a way to do a mailing, or I don't know if we do email, whether every parent's going to get it, but I'm assuming they'd get it if we did a physical mailing that would include maybe the free and reduced lunch, but just information about all of this. Could they call some number? I don't know if it's the nurse or the teacher or whoever, but just somehow get word that their family could use this, or maybe they just prefer it, like Katie says, on Fridays. But I don't know how we'll find out if we don't do something like that.
Well, I think once they start working on what our next phase is, that's an excellent time to do a media blast or a mailing or whatever it is we decide to do. Because right now, what we're doing hasn't changed, and it looks like they're already proactively looking for other options. So I see a finger, Mark Smith.
I just wanted to add, I know Joy and I had a conversation earlier in the week regarding the superintendent's communications. Specifically, she was going into the system identifying who was getting email. And then she proactively reached out to all the families that weren't listed on with an email in there and got additional email addresses and figured out a different communication system for the very, very small percentage of people that didn't have an email. Plus, we worked maybe, I don't know, not too long ago, I can't remember exactly how long ago, was to get contact phone numbers as well, because there's a texting feature. So I don't know if everybody got the message today, but it also came out as a short abbreviated text. So we're really trying to push the communication out in different ways and following through to make sure everybody's getting it.
Great, thank you, Mark. That's great information as well. Thank you, Joy. And Terry, are you stretching or raising?
No, I just want to echo, you know, it was an old kind of truism that when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and specific to Scott and your leadership team, like all of us. I'm not a text person, so I've been following Jackie and Nancy and Tina in the last few days regarding getting the teachers on board. But this is such an, out of this crisis, what a tremendous move it is. And I'm throwing towards the idea of Katie and talking to food service to somehow launch that bus route. And also have folks who maybe just want to ride swing by the two schools. I see food being given to everybody is going to pay all sorts of dividends, not just the daily, hey, a nice sandwich, but you know, I think in terms of our budget at town meeting, if we ever had to come to that, to have 400 people in the gym in Harwich, many of them knowing that that was a service that came out of the blue. So however you guys, and I know it's tricky, that maybe you pilot in a couple of weeks, having X number of buses go around the district with whatever Jackie suggested, even I like that idea to a whole bundle of food that's going to be dropped off. In any way, that really is a very personal touch that we in the schools hopefully could pull off. I was impressed with my little email telephone, Scott getting the school nurses involved. Inviting them through a newsletter to get parents to call. So I think it's all great stuff. So whatever increase in food need and usage, the better it would be for the kids, obviously, but also for the school.
Tina?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, well, first of all, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, the customer service is fabulous. I mean, everything from Scott down, it's just so extraordinary. I also think it's important, and I can't let this not be said, that a couple of years ago, we got a lot of pushback from having our buses come internally, and now we can see the value of it. And I think sometimes these things have to be highlighted in a PR way, so people can see the benefits. They may not always agree with our decisions, but in a year or two later, the decisions make a lot of sense. And I think this is an opportunity for us to say, we got our own buses and we can do this. And I think that really is important for us to, you know, say.
Thank you, Tina. Katie, I was going to throw one more mention in, and I'm sure you guys have already thought of it, but I mean, are the bus drivers essential? And my question to that would be, can we run our bus routes, our regular bus routes, you know, where they're going maybe to neighborhoods where 5 kids get on the bus, or and I think you talked about designated stops, like maybe job lot parking lot or somewhere in Harwich. So I guess you probably already did address that, and maybe it's too much to do bus stops, but never mind.
But I also think that we don't necessarily have to use the big 72 passenger buses. We have smaller buses as well that service the preschool programs and some of the special ed. And the district has our own vans, as you know, too, but also the vans that we utilize through Cape Cod Collaborative. So there's a lot of different, I don't think we need the big buses driving around, but It's really interesting, as I started saying earlier, talking to the different communities, how everybody's doing things just a little bit differently. And I think we could pick from a little bit from everybody and do a combination of a few things. And that's why I need to talk with Scott, and I think we need to have a conversation with Paul Hilton. Just to figure out, and I will say, and I think Joy can attest to this as well, the outpouring from the community wanting to help deliver meals. I think that, it would take some coordination, but, it would be, the deployment would be pretty exciting. And I think it would be, especially now while people are still able to be out and about, Good. Stay tuned is all I can say.
Madam Chair. Oh, did I freeze?
I think Jackie froze.
Jackie freeze?
Yeah.
Frozen.
Wake up.
How do you unfreeze?
Well, I will speak as vice chair. I will go ahead and take the floor. It's my understanding from some of the nonprofit work that I do that food pantries, so to speak, are considered essential workers. So I think if the bus drivers are part of that program, then they would be. I just wanted to share that. And I think we lost Jackie, so I guess I need to run the meeting. All right. Any other comments? Yes, Katie.
So Tina Meredith had asked about the percents with the E&D, and I said that I would do that. So with using the two amounts, the 550 and then 189, we would be at an E&D of 3.2%, and using the additional 170, it would be at 2.8%.
All right. And can I ask Katie, what was, remind us all again, what is that good place that we like to try to stay around?
We were hoping after 7 years to be at 4%.
4%.
So we're above 5. So
okay, so we're above 5 now, but the 170, if we did the 170, that would knock us all the way down to 2.8.
no, when the E&D was certified in FY19, it was just over 5%. Then using the 550 and the 189 would take us to 3.2%, but then using the additional would get us to 2.8%.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right. Also, Leah, I don't know, because I think Terry had the same issue that if Jackie drops out, I don't know if she can use the same link. Isn't that what you ran into, Terry?
Oh, that was a slightly different issue. I had exited Terry and unknowingly barred him from coming back, but I have since fixed it, so she should be able to come back in unless she's having connectivity issues herself.
Oh, okay.
So I just texted her that she was
All right, so
we are having a little problem in our neighborhood going on and off.
Ah, okay.
It's called unstable internet.
I had that earlier, actually. Did anybody else have comments on food distribution? I don't see any hands. All right. Subcommittee reports. I'm just going to pick up the agenda. Subcommittee reports, anyone?
Yes.
Sharon?
Well, our subcommittee met, policy subcommittee met at 5 o'clock today, and we went over a few different policies that will be presented next meeting for our first reading.
Thank you. Anybody else? Subcommittees? All right, seeing none, superintendent's report.
Let's see, where do we start? So it's been interesting to see how 1 week can completely change how you operate. So I think starting at about 10 o'clock tomorrow, I have back to back meetings just like this with all sorts of different entities. So I know Mark and I are going to be on a conversation with the Commissioner of Education, who will be rolling out his guidelines and encouragement for distance learning after 4 weeks, not promoting we go this route, but I think he's now seen the writing on the wall, as has the governor. So, one of the things that I am doing to let's say have fun in a bad situation is getting back to my roots. So I'm taking the opportunity to go and learn the technology the teachers are using. So I have about 65 elementary students that are in a little enrichment Google Classroom with me doing at-home experiments on science and engineering. And then I have almost 40, Lord knows it may have gone up over 40 this evening, that are in a Google Classroom with me on the science of pandemics. So I will go give you my 2 cents as the superintendent how this is going to play out. So here we have the Johns Hopkins page that lists what how many cases of COVID-19 are out there. Since we have been talking, the U.S. has eclipsed China for the number of confirmed cases as of today. So we have 83,507 according to this. Now the challenge is, if we, in the bottom corner here, the little yellow line is the epidemic growth curve. For China, if I push the button for China, you'll notice that China's growth curve has leveled off. Okay, that's a good sign. But it's taken China since January 23rd to level off, and the schools in China are still closed and will continue to be closed for some time now. So, so we're looking 2 months of closure to get it to even level off, and they remain closed. The US, which has eclipsed China, its growth curve is looking like this. It's an exponential increase. We haven't even come close to leveling. So my looking at this is, I anticipate that May 4th is a very optimistic May 4th, and that we really need to be hunkering down. And by the time we're done this, Terry will be like a technology guru. So I do think that that we really need to be ready to be in this for the long haul, and I'm a little worried that things are going to get more challenging before they're even going to get better, because we're not slowing down, we're sort of accelerating as a country. But I think the more we can social distance, the more we can start to go and have that graph peter this way. So one of the activities I have students doing is going to the Johns Hopkins page each day and plotting out and seeing from a nation, from a state, from a county, is there any evidence that we're starting to go and see that tip down. So anyway, there's the pessimist of the school superintendent. But I do think that we've got the resources and we've got talented staff to go and make the best of a bad situation for our students. And I'm really optimistic that we can pull through this. And I think we're going to be stronger on the other side of this than we were going into it. So I know there's going to be a lot of challenge that we're going to have to go and wrestle with. There are some bright things that show up in the midst of all of this. While I was sitting here tonight, I got texted our superintendent's award winner for academic excellence got into Harvard. So Sage Barnes has gotten into Harvard. So there's some good news. So we have there's some positive things that are happening out there, even though this is a pretty challenging time for all.
Okay, any questions, comments? Joanne? You'll have to unmute.
I got her.
No. It's right at the bottom. It's at the bottom left corner of your screen. If you,
I got
There you
it.
go.
okay.
So now, Sharon, I unmuted you. Anyway, I was talking to a woman from Arizona today because I was canceling my beautiful trip to Budapest, Amsterdam, the beginning of May, because we think this isn't going to work. So anyway, she said, well, I don't understand what the big deal is. Why are you people canceling trips? It's all from your area. They have closed nothing, and they have no word of people in their area being affected by the virus. And I said, are you doing any testing? And she said, what is it? And I said, testing, so that you can see whether or not people have it. And she said, not that I know of, but they're living the everyday life, which scares me, because I see as people cross borders, because the infection can cross borders, it's going to get scarier, is just my sense. But it was just such a weird conversation today, where she said, you've been in the house for 2 weeks? I said, yeah.
Wow. Anybody else? Thank you, Joanne. Anybody else comments? Terry?
Thanks, Tina. Scott, the thought just struck me as you were reviewing from your angle what's been going on, and it's kind of just food for thought. I wonder if we had some money, E&D or whatever, not necessarily that, come the close of school with kids not even there, if we could select the most skilled teachers who have not only been enthused about this distant learning, but also have a subject skill. Now, I haven't got the thought through middle or high school or elementary, but run a virtual school in the summer for reinforcement of, obviously, this is the best we can do, but it's not being in classes for the next, say, 9 weeks. However, maybe that summer for 5 or 6 or 7 grand, 2 or 3 teachers could, if things calm down, could run some courses in math and in whatever at 3 levels or 2, announce it to families so that their kids could get some reinforcements before school started.
I think it's a good idea, Terry. I'll kind of offer my my thoughts. You know, if let's say we emerge from this before before summertime, and I think that may be a good possibility. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but if we emerge from this before summertime, I actually think that where we're going to need to go and focus resources is kids who, we have a whole set of kids in the district that get special education services. And while we're going to be doing our best to provide special education services and ELL services during this time, I think that there's going to be a set of kids who we're going to need to help catch up. And I think that we probably are going to need at some point to divert resources that direction. And it's not just us, it's going to be every school district is going to find itself in this situation. But I think I think that providing continued enrichment is going to be important. But I also think providing opportunities for us to help kids who are struggling or who may struggle in this online environment and give them that opportunity to go and catch up.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter. Jackie, I see you back. And before I turn the meeting back over, if I could just make a quick comment. Jackie, we are under Superintendent's Report. Scott has already made the report. We're just in discussion. And I just wanted to say a couple things. Kudos to everyone, which we all have been saying. But I also want to give a shout out to Bill Burkhead, because he sent out an email message. And I think with our class of 2020, our seniors, I mean, this is especially a tough time for them. And there's a lot of uncertainty for where they might go with graduation and everything else. But I did want to just recognize Bill publicly, because his message to the senior class is wonderful. Share that. And
Thank you,
Jackie,
Tina.
I'll turn it
Sorry
back.
about that. I don't know what happened. The internet wanted me to stop talking about food or something. Not quite sure. Scott, are you still,
Yeah, I'm sure that we will make graduation happen somehow. I've been joking that it may look more like families pull up onto the front lawn at the high school like you're going to a drive-in movie, and you're with your family, but we'll figure out some way to go make it happen. It's just we've got some calendar between now and then.
great, and thank you, Tina, for picking up where I clearly dropped out. And I will catch up with Dr. Carpenter or rewatch the meeting for the rest of the superintendent's report. Moving on to the action items, we do need to revote the F121 assessment, which required due to a 50-cent change. That is 0.50, that is 2 quarters, 50 cents. And there is I don't know if Katie, do you want to just touch on that real quick?
Thank you, Jackie. So when I presented the assessment to you all for approval, the capital actually needs to be out to do 2 decimal points. When we went to do the assessment dollars to the towns, we were off by $1. So the capital has to be revoted in Harwich with a decrease of 50 cents and a decrease, I think, in Chatham as well. So the capital, we had approved $263,943 in Harwich, but it needs to be $263,942.50. I sent a sheet that hopefully you got it in your packets. And the assessment in Chatham went from 91,058 for capital to 91,057.50. So I don't know if perhaps Mrs. Scott has the sheet in front of her. It's just, so it just, when I printed out the assessment sheet, I did not expand it to 2 decimal points. So it's 50 cents that we need to fix. And last year, the capital was ended in 50 cents for both towns as well. An error on my part, I'm sorry.
Quick question.
Yes.
Do we just need to vote the capital line item and the final
Yes.
total assessment line items?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
Madam Chair. I'd like to move to, yes? Yeah, revote the assessment for FY21 for Harwich capital to be $263,942.50. Chatham's capital to be $91,057.50 for a total of $355,000.
I would second that.
And I'm going to do a roll call this evening. So Joanne?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. Questions or discussion? Mary? Were you raising your hand?
No, I was
Okay, great.
unmuted.
That's okay. Roll call, Joanne?
Yes.
Oh, wait, sorry, Ms. Scott.
I was
Do you
just
have a-
going to ask, do we want to do the capital and the total assessment as one vote?
We can, that's fine. Do you want to amend your motion?
I'd like to amend my motion to add to the capital revote to also include the total FY21 assessment to be for Harwich to be $27,272,527.50. Chatham's total FY21 assessment to be $9,053,202.50 for a total FY21 assessment of $36,325,730.
Do we have to withdraw the second and then? Nope, so the second still,
Whoever seconds can second.
I would second that last additional motion.
okay, great. So now I'll do a roll call. If there are any other questions or discussions, seeing none. Joanne?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Tina?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yay.
Sharon?
Aye.
Jackie? Aye. I think that's everyone.
Terry, yes.
Oh, Terry, I'm sorry, where'd you go? I missed you. Terry, yes, okay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And the last item would be the presentation of the warrants. And just as a reminder that Joanne has been signing as necessary as our emergency designated signer during our social distancing. And public comment at this time, if there is anybody who would like to participate in the public comment, I welcome that. Seeing none. Nice to see you, Mrs. Maycomer. I see you over there. All right, seeing none, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I think it was seconded.
Was it seconded? Okay, I'm just gonna do,
Hi, Joe.
all right, I'll do a roll call. Joanne?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Tina?
Aye.
Nancy?
Hi.
Joe?
Reluctantly, aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Jackie? Aye. I know none of us want to go. Motion carries, meeting adjourned.
Good to see you all.
21.
Good to see you all. Stay healthy, everybody.
You all
Bye.
take care.
Thank you all.
Stop the
Good job,
recording
Jackie,
now as
Tina.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.